All yours.
Thank you so much, Andres. So the 30 by 30 initiative, that is all about increasing the number of newly licensed engineers who are women to 30% by the year 2030. This program was initiated by Engineers Canada in 2015. However, it first originated in Alpega. The purpose of this panel is to discuss progress on reaching 30 by 30. The reason for 30%, or 1/3, is universally held as the tipping point for sustainable change. Reaching 30 by 30 will help drive the shift in overall membership of the engineering profession. So I have 4 fantastic women who are going to be on the panel today. We have Jean Boudreau. She is the president of Engineers Canada, at least for a short little while. And she is, along with Engineering Canada, of course, is the owners of 30 by 30. We also have Margaret Ann Hodges. She is a Saskatchewan engineering regulator volunteer with the PEGS and a 30 by 30 initiative champion, as well as she is on the Engineers Canada board as well. And we have Lale Bejat. She is the National NSERC Chair for Women in Science and Engineering for the Prairies region, and she is a professor at University of Calgary. So we have Eva Chun, Supervisor of Project Management for the LRT expansion in the city of Edmonton, and she is also one of our expert panel guests. So we're going to start off. I have a few questions that I will ask the panelists, and we'll also open it up to more questions from the audience. Please feel free to put your questions in the chat at any time. We will have one of the volunteers monitoring the chat because my multitasking is not so great. But let's get going with, basically, we want to report on what's happening with the 30 by 30 initiative. So let's start with Jean. So Jean, as of December 2019, the percentage of women who are newly licensed engineers was 17.9%. In your view, are we making sufficient progress? And what do you see as the biggest challenges to achieve the 30 by 30 goal?
Well, thank you, Ingrid, and thank you for inviting me here to participate in the panel. It's to be considered an expert is always a good thing, I guess, as long as you can. I will try and hold up my end of it. Yes, we have been hovering at about 18% from 2017 to 2019, about 18% of newly licensed engineers as women. And we don't have the actual number yet for 2020, but we think we are, we expect to be breaking the 20% line for the first time. So that is encouraging. But given that we have only 9 years to make it to 30%, my personal opinion is that I would rather we were closer to 30% by now. If we are thinking only in terms of young girls being recruited into engineering, really we only have 1 more year, because if you take into account their schooling years and their years of experience that are required before they can apply for licensure, we really only have 1 more year to encourage young girls to consider engineering as a career. But we also have to take into account the various stages of career paths for women. And what we have heard is that women leave the engineering profession, leave it due to constant and systemic discrimination and harassment at every point in their career journey. So that includes their time as an undergraduate and as an EIT or early career stage. And if they do it then they're not licensing. That affects our numbers. That affects our goal of reaching 30%. 30 by 30 is about changing the culture of engineering to make it welcoming and accepting for everyone. But making change is a process. And to be effective, Engineers Canada will now shift its process and its focus to building a strong foundation. And to a civil engineer, that makes perfect sense to me. This means getting engineering leaders across the profession to identify and acknowledge the problem. The focus is further supported by our Engineers Canada's new strategic plan for 2022-2024, which was just approved a couple of weeks ago. And in this, we are focusing on acknowledging the issue across the entire profession, that culture change is necessary, the importance of engaging leaders and employers in the profession, and we will have to achieve this through collective impact and collaboration. So getting back to your question about what do I see as the biggest challenge, is getting all these people to accept that there is a problem and getting them to buy into the fact that we have to work towards this goal.
Great, thank you so much, Jean. I can appreciate the comments, especially on discrimination. I started off my engineering career working on oil rigs. So being the only woman of a rig, you kind of learn about, you know, harassment. But I'm also interested, you did mention, you know, we have one more year to basically recruit young women into engineering programs so that they can still achieve their PEng by 2030. So that lends itself to my next question to Lale. Dr. Lale, when we are recruiting women to enter engineering programs to attain the 30 by 30, how do we reduce how do we improve the retention rate?
So thank you very much for the question, and Jean, thank you so much for the comments. I just first wanted to start that I am connecting to this wonderful meeting from the traditional territory of the Blackfoot Confederacy, the Tsuut'ina, the Nakota Nation, and the Métis Nation Region 3, and all the people who make their homes in Region 7. I think it's very important to acknowledge it because of the spirit of reconciliation of where I am coming from. So for the question on how do we attract more female, was that the
retention?
Oh, the retention. Yeah. So I think with COVID, the question of retention became a lot more harder. But also a lot of the big problems that we had previously in our workplace that were sort of hidden were done. Women still do a majority of the unpaid care work. So for example, every day women wake up, make lunches. Schools don't provide lunches in Alberta. I don't know if they do anywhere else. They do in France, for example. They take the kids to school. They take for all the doctor's appointments and so on. And this is not all women, but generally in the family, these types of responsibilities are put on women. So this might not really affect the young career, early career women, but when you get to the second decade of your work, these things start to actually really impact the amount of time you have and the amount of energy you have. But also at the same time, because there is this perception that you have all this other work, the women might not get the jobs themselves, that might not go for the opportunities that will give them those higher career, those higher positions in the career, or they might not be given those opportunities because there's this perception that they will be busy with the care giving aspects. So there is this sort of a dual or three different factors all working on women. And if you talk with anyone with children this past year, you can see that the amount of burden and work was just not bearable. And people were just expected to just drop everything and do everything at home while they were also teaching their kids and taking care of all the other stuff as well. So for making this, we actually have to do quite a few different things. First of all, we need to acknowledge that care work is actually work, which makes you part of your professional development. And I see that the engineers, professional engineers, UConn has actually added care work as one of their CPDs or things that people can do to improve their professional hours. So that is one of the important steps, that the understanding that these are things that you also acquire skills on that. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, when we build our systems, we need to understand that the new work people are doing is not just based on hours. It's not very important how many hours I work, as much as those hours are work, how can I collaborate with other people? How many new ideas and creative ideas I can bring in, and how many good solutions I can make. And women have always shown that they are really able to contribute very well in these aspects. There is actually a study that shows that the teams that had more women in them, they performed a lot more creatively and had a higher, sort of a better solutions to different problems. And that can go back to all of those skills that we learned by being collaborative. And so it is very important to understand the nature of our work has changed, and the nature of how we do the merits, the hours, and so on needs to also change. And so just to finish up, I wanted to say that a lot of the times when we talk about women in engineering, we talk about how to attract more women, but also when we are talking about women in engineering, we talk about how to fix a woman to fit within the system. Okay, how do you negotiate for a better salary? You know, why do we never talk about how can we change the system to fit everyone? So to be an inclusive system. So how do we have a system that is just, that people get the salary they deserve and there is no gender wage gap? So these are, I think, the things we need to look forward. And once we have some of these problems solved, young women are very smart, and I know that they all want to contribute to the society and make the society. So I think the percentage of women in the profession will go much higher.
I agree. Yes, that is so true. If instead of making women adjust to the system, why not change the system? And obviously, the retention is critical to maintain, and not just, as you said, recruit more women into the field, but also, you know, keeping the women that we do have in the field. So we've got Margaret Ann, you with your APEGS experience, and also your experience on the Engineers Canada Qualifications Board, and plus your many experiences of volunteering on women in engineering issues. I noticed that the newly licensed engineer Saskatchewan is almost 20%, which is higher than the national average. So what do you think APEGS does differently to have a slightly more positive trajectory?
Well, that's really hard to say exactly and pinpoint, other than I can talk about the history of APEGS in terms of its support of women in engineering. In fact, I was on APEG's very first Women in Engineering Committee that was formed around 1992. So there you can do the math and figure out how long I've been talking about this particular subject. And that formed out of the 1991 Building Bridges Prairie Region Forum, which APEGS was a significant supporter of, in providing and helping bring together women volunteers, as well as providing the resource supports, administrative office space and capability. So it really started way back then. That Women in Engineering Committee was very much doing the things that we have been talking about and been suggested all day long. It was a group that was holding networking events. It was a group that helped APEGS organize childcare during the annual meeting as a means to encouraging women to participate. And APEGS, the way the licensure and membership is structured here in this province, sort of separates a membership and a licensure. So if you are on maternity leave, or if you are temporarily out of work or whatever, you can maintain your membership, your PN, and all of that. And the license really allows you to kind of opt out and then opt back in when you have a work to do. So you don't leave the profession in that respect, and perhaps that's one of those particular opportunities. So back in that 1992-ish time frame, I would say I knew almost all the women engineers in the province. My numbers, I'm kind of estimating, so don't hold me to them, but that was probably around 100 women at the time. It was probably around 2% given the size of the association. And in that context, I am talking about a couple of things. One, of course, this is people, registrants that live in Saskatchewan, as opposed to members that are members across multiple regulatory bodies. And of course, it was APES back in those days, which I still love that acronym. I don't care. It was a lot of fun. And that was pre-geoscientists joining us. And of course, the geoscientists now being part of our regulatory body actually have done a great service to helping APEGS get to those numbers, because the geologists probably have better representation than engineers, and I don't know, I don't have good reasons. Everybody just speculates. One of the interesting questions I've seen going on in the chat is asking about other professions and so forth. And I was thinking about this last night because I just wanted to share a little bit of a story. My mother was a medical doctor. She was a pediatrician, and she graduated medical school. Are you ready for this? In 1946. She was in the army because World War II was going on, and she had to be. So in 1946, and I had these numbers for the 30 by 30 presentation I did a few years ago. Basically, medical grad. So we'll use at that point of one's career. In 1946, there were 26 women in Canada that graduated from medical school in all of Canada. So so I was kind of thinking, you know, where were we in 1992-ish, 93 in terms of Saskatchewan, and then where are we now? So if I fast forward in engineering in Saskatchewan, we're probably around 1,100. I think. I'm sorry, I don't have the most up-to-date numbers, but we're in that order of magnitude. So that's 10 times. So I'm going to be optimistic and say, you know, I mean, there has been significant growth, because there's also been a significant growth in the number of engineers, period, that are registered. So that's 10 times on the engineering side, 30 years. So I looked at these medical stats in terms, again, for graduates, and lo and behold, in order to go 10 times 26, you know, takes us into the 260 to 300. And lo and behold, in 1974, there were 312 women graduated from medical school in all of Canada. So in that 30 years, they had that same 10-fold growth. So perhaps, you know, we should be a little bit more optimistic of where we're headed and so forth. You know, it's interesting, some of the discussions so far about, you know, retaining women and meeting 30 by 30. I think we have one of the big things that needs to be considered and thought about more is that engineering is very much driven by the economy. We are business to business type relationships. That's probably one of the reasons why a lot of the public really doesn't understand what engineers do, and to a certain degree geoscientists as well, and why young girls don't necessarily see themselves, because they go to female doctors or they see female lawyers. But again, that business to business relationship sort of puts us in the background and hides us a bit more. But one of the interesting stats, and Jean probably knows this from the 30 by 30 environmental scan that Engineers Canada did a couple of years ago, is the fact that when it comes to graduates, whether or not they continue and find a career and pursue engineering versus finding a career and doing something else, it's only 50% of the grads, male and female. Like, it just doesn't matter. Only 50% of those graduates are actually finding a career in engineering. So think about all the hard work that 30 by 30 does to get girls interested in school, the math and sciences, get over the physics issue, take the 4 or 5 years of engineering in university and those challenges, and then we lose them at graduation. And that also has a part to play that this is talking, 30 by 30 is talking about registered members of the profession. And there is that question of, are young graduates actually valuing a P-Eng and their EIT status? And that's another big question that needs to be tackled. So maybe I'll just kind of pause there.
Yes, Margaret, and I agree. We definitely need to continue on. The fight's not over yet. So we have Eva, who is with the City of Edmonton, but I'm going to ask you a general question. We see that women leave the engineering profession within the first 10 years at twice the rate as male engineers. This means that supporting female engineers in their first 5 years is imperative to completing their professional engineering registration and, of course, in achieving the 30 by 30 initiative. What can employers do to encourage women to stay in engineering?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. You know, I think back to when I first graduated, not that, well, it's been a while now, so it feels like not that long ago, but, you know, typically I would say graduating around mid-20s. And recognizing what time of their life that is, right? Major milestones they're reaching. Some might be talking about marriage, children, and some might be pursuing graduate studies. So these are just examples. So there's lots going on around that time of life. And, you know, Margaret Ann brought up the whole retention, like hiring into the companies, and, you know, whether there's biases in how hiring approaches, right? So that's another issue. I think that needs to be kind of, companies can explore further and really look deep into what they're doing and their practices. Beyond that, though, like I think what role of the employers they can do is, like when I think about early graduates, very green coming out of school, you know, what they need is actually some guidance. You know, they're in a phase where they're discovering who they are, what their niche area is. And sometimes you don't even know until you're exposed to different experiences. So what's really important from an employer perspective is to provide these opportunities, I think, for these, you know, new employees, especially the ones that are really early on in their career. We often talk about mentorship and coaching and things like that, but fundamentally what they all mean is providing more awareness to these new individuals, because they're like almost like brand new, right? Like they're exploring their world, trying to understand how it works. So when you start with a company, you really don't know where you fit within the company itself. Oftentimes, I think we need to show them a map of some sort, like, okay, so you fit in this organization, which is ginormous, and how does what you do play a part in the end result and, like, you know, the success of the company or the success of a project. So important. And the reason I say that is because I think, and I'm generalizing a little bit, but for myself, I as a, maybe because I'm a female engineer, but I want to know how I'm contributing to the end result. I want to see, and that's what gives me a pride in my work, and it actually fuels me to want to do more and continue on in the profession. So it's really almost igniting a bit of a passion and helping them find their way. Another thing is, you know, networking. So does the company provide opportunities for them to connect with others? When you look up in the organization, do they see role models? Do they have someone they can talk to when they have questions? Or, you know, like if you look up and all you see is, no offense to folks who fit it, but like middle-aged white guys, I've encountered this myself. I'm a minority in many different meetings and projects I'm on. And you look up and you go, well, you know, how would I get to that level if I can't see someone already there? So you're really trying to break through and develop finding your own way. And then another thing is about, as a company, we need to recognize that there's training that needs to be involved. Training for the supervisor, training for all staff, not just the females. Don't send them to their own, you know, like I agree with the comment about we're not trying to fix the females or the minorities. Like we're trying to together develop an understanding of how we can all work better together to develop better results. So I would say that's probably some of the major things a company can do to support a new individual, but as individuals too, like as role models ourselves, I think there's some responsibility on us. So I remember talking a lot to my peers and my supervisors or just other like-minded like ladies in the office at the time. And I was very lucky. One of my first jobs, I had like very supportive colleagues, just about 5 years more experience than me. and talk to them. And as individuals, we need to help guide along the next wave. Beyond just the employer, I think as individuals, professionals, we have some responsibility and be vulnerable. I want to say that like some of the best advice I got is because colleagues were willing to open themselves and share some of their challenges. And I don't know what it is, but sometimes as females, we don't want to share the challenges we face because we feel like we're being weak and we don't want to show that weakness. But it's okay to do that because I think it helps us prepare for what is likely like reality and mentally prepare. If it doesn't happen, that's great. But if the challenge does come, then you're more prepared for it. So these are just kind of some of the things I think we can, contribute.
I agree, Eva, and we do need to guide the next wave. And you are 100% correct. If we're not open and vulnerable, and then those that are up and coming are just going to think, oh, like they all have it together, and I don't know what my purpose is. So yeah, those are excellent points. So we are actually, I do have more questions, but I've seen a lot of streaming questions in the chat, so I think I'll just make sure that we get in at least one or two questions from the group. For example, from Gail Pally, retention is definitely a problem, but is leaving engineering well measured? Once people stop paying their association fees, this can be seen as a measure of leaving the profession. Well, it may not be the case. They may actually be promoted to management. So that's a great question. Leaving engineering, is this well measured? Who wants to take on that question? Yes.
I'm only answering because nobody else was, and of course I don't know if we can. Like how do you do that? I mean, companies have exit interviews and so forth, and you hope to capture information that way, and of course it can be very, very personal. So I don't know how we can pursue doing that without the horrendous invasion of privacy and so forth. So again, not a great answer, but I maybe I'll turn it around and talk about, we do a lot of focus on why leaving, and I'm a big supporter of the Discover E organization and the great work that they do, and hopefully many on this panel have participated in their global marathon and so forth. I know Engineers Canada encourages, closely works with them as well, and they've put together a report, and it's called Despite the Odds, young women who persist in engineering. And I think that's really important for us to become acquainted with, as well as why do we stay type of thing. Well, damn it, we should stay because we worked darn hard 4 years. It's a good paying job. It has great responsibility, great opportunities, and so forth. So we should. And they've been finding the characteristics of women that are staying tend to have a very positive attitude about the engineering, and I'm looking at the report here. That's why I'm looking down. They see value in the field of engineering. So yeah, you persist through that type of thing, and you carry on. And one of the comments we were talking about changing the culture and so forth. I actually am a big believer that the culture changes when women participate and stay type of thing. I've noticed that in my own workplace. I work for SaskTel, and I have noticed in groups that when there's a few more women, it kind of builds on each other, and you can feel the culture changing because we are there. So that's why it's so important to stay. Let's see, what else do they demonstrate self-efficacy. They embrace the STEM identities, strong networking type thing. So again, ladies out there, make certain you're building your networks, and being part of an event like this certainly does that. And all of that helps them create that sense of belonging. So I just want to emphasize that, because I think those are some of the secrets as to what will help us stay. And when we stay, we will change the environment because we are there. So.
Can I add to what Margaret is saying about why we should stay?
Yeah.
So we are among friends. Everybody here is, I assume, is an engineer. So I'm going to say it. Engineers build the world. Everything we see, it has been built by an engineer. And currently, most of it is designed for men. Right now, I'm sitting on a chair, and I don't know if you noticed at the beginning, I was moving my chair up and down because my desk, my chair, my computer, all of it were made for someone much taller than me. Even my kitchen is made that like that. But that's not only the only things. It's like go to the crash test dummies and the stories about that, and the building temperature and so on. So it is not just that why do we stay? It's that we have to stay to make a world that is fitted for everyone, that is made for everyone. And the same with the systems. And the world we are having is gonna go through major, massive changes. So we're gonna have climate crisis that's gonna change all the way we do things and our relationship with nature. We're gonna have AI, which is gonna have a massive impact on what we can do and how we do things. And we are going to have biotechnology, which is going to change our bodies. And in all of these, if we don't have the voices of all of the people in the world, especially the 51% who are female, who are not being in the designing and making part of the world, so then we are going to not be able to make that world, that those systems that are going to be good for everyone and everybody will thrive in. And I remember, I think it was Ingrid that I was telling you, like the previous motto in engineering the school was look to your right, look to your left, and one of you will be gone by the end of the year. And I think our new motto should be look to your right, look to your left, and the three of you will be making the future. So, so just have that pride, but also have that responsibility that you are doing this in the future, and we need your voices, your ideas, and your actions to do that.
That is awesome, Layla. The change from like some of you are going to get lost to like, hey, like we can all make it through here. And so I know we've had a bunch more questions, and I have not kept track. So if there's another question, a good question, can my super duper volunteer assistant let me know?
Sure. There's been a few questions relating to what other professions have done to keep women in their profession, and how engineering compares to women retention to other professions. Kind of similar questions.
Who would like to tackle that one?
Well, I can start with the medicine. I think there were some medicines and laws questions. And I think there were few things that has stalled our progress compared to medicine. So first of all, it's like if you look at the movies and TV series, we have like Grey's Anatomy, where there's like so many female surgeons, where in reality there's not, but at least there is all these role models of strong people. And then you look at where are the places where engineers are portrayed, and it is Big Bang Theory, where all the physicists and engineers are male, and all the waitresses the women, and the biologists are the women. So it's just like there's this disparity on portraying women in tech and in engineering. And then the other problem is with the way the admission to engineering the schools work, and that's some of the things we did for in Schulich, is that in admission in grade 12 in Alberta, anybody who wants to come to engineering needs physics. Now, this is not a big problem, and actually, at least that's true about all the schools in Canada. In Alberta, in University of Calgary, you don't need to have physics in high school to go to physics in university, but you need it to come to engineering, which is fine, except that they teach physics when students don't have enough math background to actually be able to understand physics easily. So when a student in high school in grade 11 or 12 takes physics, they don't have the math background, they don't know derivatives and so on. So they go take the physics and they think it is very hard. And this is for both male and female. They think it's very hard because they don't know the math. And so what happens is now we get the stereotypes of women take the physics and think this is very hard. So they say, as a girl, I cannot understand physics, so I'm not a good engineer. So they drop engineering and they go to biology. But for male students, there is this thing that males are good at physics. So they say, well, it's okay. I didn't get it now, but I'll get it later. So they continue on in physics. And so one of the things at the University of Calgary we did is that we have this alternative pathway. We say, if you're good in biology, but you haven't taken the physics, come to us. We teach you all of the physics you need to know in 1 month in an engineering way. So we call it this Bioengineering Summer Institute, where students learn from the concepts of engineering on how to understand the physics. So for example, for motion, we had one of our students who was an Olympic medalist in luge, Alex Skull, came and talked about the motion and how the luge work and how it doesn't fly off, and also how friction works, how does it stop. The same thing with how does MRI work for understanding magnetism. And so these are some of the ways we can actually change the minds of the younger students in high school about their ability on being an engineer, but also understanding that all of these things you are learning are fun things and great things to do.
I'd like to add one of the things that APEGS has done, and we did it under my watch as 30 by 30 champion. And I do want to let everybody know I was APEG's first 30 by 30 champion. I'm no longer in that role, which is fine. We have another wonderful leader there. Is we set up at both the University of Saskatchewan and the University of Regina awards for women that are in university studying some other discipline and are interested in entering engineering after they are there. And it was interesting because when we were debating the creation of these, whether it's scholarships, bursaries, award, whatever the right university term is, it was actually our university professor, members of the 30 by 30 committee, who said that, that's an opportunity, that is a gap, and they are substantial awards. They're $3,000 each type of thing. So if you want to really do something, there is that opportunity that kind of, captures women once they're there. And one of my mentors in terms of a woman engineer, and I actually reported to her for a few years. In fact, she lent me her maternity clothes when I was needing them. So how many engineers have a boss that lends them their maternity clothes? She found engineering having started in fine arts and theater, actually, and came to engineering. So yeah, I think there's great opportunity waiting for us there.
Thank you so much, Margaret and Lale. And we are actually out of time already. But I would love to have Jane, as Engineers Canada outgoing president, if you have any closing thoughts to this panel. We'll give you a couple of minutes.
No, that's kind of because there's so much good stuff that's been said here, and I'm afraid I get distracted because when you start talking physics, I think back to when I enrolled in engineering at UNB here in Fredericton. And that was back in the dark ages when you didn't do it online, you had to go and stand in lineups and do all that good stuff. And it was the physics department that said, "Ooh, are you sure you want to do this?" Because they saw my high school physics mark. But anyway, no, we've heard some great stuff, and some of the questions that I can't answer, the things about leaving the profession and comparing it to other professions, but that certainly is part of the work behind 30 by 30 is learning from the other professions and trying to find out. Part of the research that's going on is actually contacting and particularly women in engineering, and why or women that have it. I mean, it's hard to find people that have left, but obviously that's part of it. Why did you leave? Why did you stay? What would have made it easier in terms of licensure? Was it that you're doing the work but you haven't become licensed? There's so many aspects to it, and it's mind-boggling. But as Margaret Ann said, we have come a long way, baby. I mean, we are. The problem is, in terms of getting this 30 by 30, we're feeling the crunch for sure, and part of this research has actually steered Engineers Canada to working from a different perspective in terms of instead of focusing on what the numbers are and why are they not where we want them, is start at the foundation and how can we get them there. And Engineers Canada is just part of it. I mean, and like you said, this started actually with APEGA back in 2010. And there's Engineers Canada, there's the regulators, there's all these people, the schools, the higher education institutions. It is a group effort. It is major collaboration. And I'm proud to say that I think we have accomplished a lot, but we're kind of into the last sprint, aren't we? Almost, in terms of meeting that critical point that's been identified as this is our goal, and after that it's onward and upward, and look out, lawyers and doctors and all those other ones that have 50%, because the engineers are right on your heels.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Gina. And I agree. Like, if now is not the time to give up. And although I really wish we would have had time to talk about Wise Planet, which I think is a really cool initiative that Layla's working on. And Eva, on maternity leave, of course, there's like a whole perspective on being a woman engineer, on paternal leave, maternity leave, paternity leave. And so, but we're out of time, so I am going to pass it back to our MC, Claudia. Thank you so much, panelists, for your input today.
Virtual applause for all of you. Thank you so much for coming today. This is the only reason we are all here today, and we've been doing this for 4 years, is because of the 30 by 30 initiative. You gave us a target. And it's a lot easier to find your way out of the jungle if you can see the helicopter or the light. So thank you for this. I have to give out some baskets. Ingrid, do you want to do it, or do you want me to do it?
Go ahead, Claudia. You've got the control.
All right.